What's up, everybody? UFC 298's main event, Alexander the Great Volkanovski taking on Ilia Topuria. Guys, this is a sensational matchup, but I want to break this down a little bit as we go throughout the video, but I want to bring a couple details to your attention that I believe are going to play a huge factor in this headliner for UFC 298, and that is the fact that Ilia Topuria, as great as he is, as good as he has been, has not fought the top of the heap and 145 pounds. And now, before you say that he fought Josh Emmett, when we consider the top of the heap at 145, who are those names that pop into mind, right? We talk about, outside of the champion Volkanovski, we talk about Max Holloway, we talk about Yair Rodriguez, we talk about Brian Ortega. Those are the names that really come to mind at featherweight. And right now, we have not seen Ilia go up against any of those guys. And so when we look at this, how much of that plays into this matchup heading into a fight against Volkanovski? Well, I think it plays actually a pretty significant role. And the reason for that being is we've seen Ilia Topuria look dominant, guys. There is no doubt about it. The guy has all the potential to become a big star in the UFC. He has a heck of a following already. He has a big fan base. He's got the 0 in the loss column. The guy's undefeated. He's dripping with confidence. Now let's talk about why he's dripping with confidence. What have a lot of Volkanovski's opponents at 145 pounds faced prior to taking on Volkanovski? They faced Max Holloway. Now, the treat for everybody in heading into this matchup, in my opinion, Ilia has not fought Max Holloway. Now, you could say, well, that's a good thing, that's a bad thing, that's debatable. But what I am going to bring to your attention is the fact that if Ilia Topuria fought Max Holloway, maybe we don't get this fight. Maybe Ilia loses to Max, or maybe Ilia beats Max. I don't know. But I believe that has a lot to do with the confidence that Ilia is coming into this matchup with. And I think that, honestly, this is best case scenario for Ilia Topuria and for the fans before coming into this matchup. And the reason for that being is because for that exact reason, if we saw Max Holloway go out there and beat Ilia Topuria, would Ilia be fighting for the belt? Probably not. Would he have the same amount of confidence coming into a title fight against Alexander Volkanovski coming off a loss to Max Holloway? Probably not. And I know that people are going to point out, well, we saw Max really have a close fight with Yair Rodriguez, where some people might have thought Yair won that fight. That's true. We saw Yair perform okay against Volkanovski. We saw the greatness of Volkanovski take over as the fight played out. We saw Max Holloway batter Brian Ortega and put on a clinic. And then Ortega gets his wits about him, coaches the Ultimate Fighter, goes out there, puts Volkanovski in some of the most trouble we've seen him in with that submission. But guys, overall, Ilia Topuria not having to fight those couple names at the top of the featherweight division. Now, a lot of that is landscape and the way things have played out. But I really believe the UFC sees something in Ilia Topuria where they were taking no chances of Ilia Topuria possibly suffering a loss at the helm of those top names in the division. Now, I know people are going to say, well, Josh Emmett's not an easy fight. Guys, Josh Emmett has tremendous power in that right hand. Josh Emmett is a great fighter. But what we saw against Yair Rodriguez is if you're able to avoid that right hand of Josh Emmett, he becomes incredibly one-dimensional. Now, I picked Josh Emmett to flatline Bryce Mitchell in that matchup, and I know people are going to say, short notice this, short notice that. If Bryce Mitchell took that fight with having a full camp, that fight I still believe would have played out the exact same way because styles make fights. Bryce Mitchell has a gigantic gap in the striking. But we saw what Ilia Topuria did to Bryce Mitchell. So going off of that blueprint, I'm like, Emmett's got this in the bag. Now, when we see Emmett go up against Ilia Topuria, we saw he has very good boxing. We saw that he was able to outbox Josh Emmett. He was able to avoid that right hand of Josh Emmett, which is all very impressive stuff. And that right there alone has built confidence for Ilia Topuria. The UFC gave him the perfect matchup to get him ready for Alexander Volkanovski, right? They gave him a guy that was going to stand and trade with him, that had basically, he was very one-dimensional by spamming an overhand right, which Ilia Topuria had to go out there, he had to win and get the job done. But if you look at the top 5 guys, is Josh Emmett, when Emmett was right on the cusp there, he was fighting Yair for the interim belt, is that not the best matchup to give Ilia Topuria? I believe it is. I believe that that's the perfect matchup to give him because we know how good Max Holloway is. We've seen him fend off those up-and-coming contenders and knock them off to where they don't get that title shot. Hence, Arnold Allen. Like, we've seen what happens. So I believe there was a lot of strategy going into this with Ilia Topuria, and I've made videos saying I believe the UFC likes Alexander Volkanovski, but I believe that they are looking to put the best guy in there that they can to try to add some new flow to the 145-pound division. And guys, I really believe the UFC thinks that this guy can get it done. And for the reasons that I brought to your attention of Max not fighting Max Holloway, that just proves my point a little bit more. The fact that this guy's coming in there with supreme confidence. The UFC never gave Ilia a matchup to where he faced any type of adversity that could have any false confidence coming into this matchup. Now, I know that people are going to point out, well, we saw against Jai Herbert, he got caught with a head kick. Now, that's something to note heading into the Volkanovski matchup that I believe Volk's team is going to look to weaponize, because on the local pro circuit prior to the UFC, Ilia Topuria was actually dropped with the exact same left high kick that Jai Herbert hit him with. So that maybe that's something, you know, that could be a weakness of Ilia Topuria. But guys, the bottom line is the UFC has done an outstanding job of giving Ilia the correct matchups to get him into this position. And what does that mean? That means that the UFC sees something in Ilia Topuria that they like, that they are trying to get this man the belt. Now, I know Alexander Volkanovski is the best at 145 pounds that we may have ever seen, right? I mean, him and Max Holloway, but he's beaten Max, so we kind of have to give him the edge, right? I mean, we've seen what we've seen from Volk. But I believe Ilia Topuria not having to fight the Ortegas, having to fight the Yair Rodriguez, the Max Holloway fights, I believe that that is going to play a huge factor in this matchup, because I believe that Ilia Topuria knows Alexander Volkanovski is very good. But I don't think he's going to show Volkanovski the same respect that we might have seen if Ilia goes out there and takes an L along the way inside the top of the heap in the division. Now, maybe this is a little bit of a stretch. Maybe this doesn't have anything to do with it. I want to hear what you all think down in the comments, guys, because I believe Ilia Topuria is the biggest threat that we have seen at 145 pounds to Alexander Volkanovski. I believe the UFC has built this guy up strategically. They have built up his confidence to where this man truly believes he is going to be the champion, which is why I believe with not only the tools that he has, but he possesses all the traits necessary to take out Alexander the Great Volkanovski. Will he do it? Yet to be seen, but I want to hear from you all down in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, help your boy out. See you next time.